Welcome back to another episode of Sitar Gurukul. On the last class, we discussed how to identify and count the Teen Tal vilambit, which is the very slow version of Teen Tal. Still 16 beats, just counted at a much slower BPM. So I believe we showed you how to count in that specific speed. I believe it was 40. 40 is a bit too slow, and the slower it gets, the more difficult it is to play, and we'll understand just that in a later episode. In today's episode, I am going to show you how to play the first part of the composition that I just played before this video started. We are going to play a composition in Teen Tal, which is also ages old. It's I've heard 60s recording of Ustad Vilayat Khan playing this composition, and to be very frank, this is probably my most favorite composition in Yaman Teen Tal. This is the first vilambit composition that I learned. Along with me, most sitar students who learn vilambit in Teen Tal start off by this composition. This composition will start in the 12th beat. As I was saying, that we have already played a gat or a medium tempo beat in Teen Tal that started from the first or the sum of Teen Tal. In this vilambit composition, we are going to start on the 12th beat. So like the previous episode, I told you that number 1 beat, number 9, which is of course the khali, and the 12th beat is very important. I hope that you have already started to count and identify, just as I have told you. We are going to keep highlighting the 12th beat. In this composition as well, you are going to have 3 parts. The first part is going to be the sthayi, or the constant part, which is going to come up every time, or it's also even called the mukhda of the composition. In the second part, we are going to have the manja, which is the middle portion of the composition, and then we are going to have the antara, which is the conclusion of the composition. Now, there are various ways when you're going to listen to maestros playing the sitar. You're going to notice that some maestros, they prefer to play the entire composition before they're going to build up on that composition. So they're going to make a statement, playing the first part and then beautifying, and then going to the second part instantly, and concluding with the conclusion or the antara of the composition simultaneously. And then they're going to do more advanced things in developing the overall composition. And then there are people or musicians who would start off with the sthayi of the composition and build on that, and later introduce the manja and build on that furthermore, and finally end with the antara. And usually when this happens, every time they're going to make a switch, they're also going to bring up the tempo a little bit. So we can strategize later. Now, coming back to the first composition, first part of the vilambit composition, we are going to also learn to count. But first, I want you to take your notebooks out. We're still working on the articles, which you will be able to find in our website. There are 4 already in 3 languages: Hindi, Bangla and English. And over there you're going to find notes, you're going to find much more information on whatever we discuss on these videos, so do check them out. So the first few lines, let's memorize the first few lines. The first line is ga, re, sa, and just like on the last class, I explained that the tabla played on my app, since it was so slow, the 40 BPM beat cycles, there was a substantial gap between every 2 beats. So you could do a few things to, things that are going to act as fillers and going to make it sound less boring. So in this case, we are going to use the chikari. Of course, there are ways where you can use the chikari out of the standard system that I'm going to show you now, and there are bends in notes that you can also do, but more on that later. So we are going to start off with the composition, the notes ga, re, sa. So I'm going to start with the chikari, and it's going to make sense to you why I started with the chikari as soon as I start playing with the tabla. So ga, re, sa. So if you noticed, I have played a chikari after every note. So for this part that you're learning, this is very important. The improvisation is going to come later, so it's not going to sound very beautiful. We're going to make it sound beautiful, but before, we want to make sure that we are following it like a textbook. So very simple approach. First three notes: ga, re, sa, and you have chikaris in the middle, and then you have ni, da, ni. From the top, ga, re, sa, ni, da, ni. So and then re, re, ga. So we want a slight bend on the re. But if you notice here that the bend or the mir that I took, I didn't take it from re to ga. Instead, I took my finger to ga first. An approximate ga, it doesn't have to be exactly like a ga, because it's going to have a re mostly, but the re is going to be carried from the ga, like this. But if I speed it up a little and I don't want to stretch it out all the way to an approximate ga, I could even do it at a much smaller gap, so something like a komal ga, but it's not going to show. So it's a matter of personal choice. I would suggest you take it all the way from ga to re, as close as you can get to the ga, and then letting it go, and it's going to fall on re eventually because it is the re fret. I'm going to play it from the top one more time. So you're also going to notice that after every three notes I take a gap. So gap, gap. So we've done this part. This part is going to have the sum. So since we're start with the sum is still the most important beat, that's going to sum it all up. But you're going to start from 12, and then you're going to emphasize or highlight on the 1, kind of like this. To make sense of all of this, we're going to play it with the tabla. You don't have to fully understand it at the moment. You just have to listen to it and make sure that it makes sense. We are actually landing on the first beat and starting from the 12th. So I hope you can listen to the tabla. Seven, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1. So you can see the ga lands exactly on 1. So we're going to start from the 12th beat again. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, ready, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1. Now we are still on the sthayi part, or the first part of the composition, and then we are going to play the second part of the sthayi. So you end it over here, re, re, ga. So one, 2, 3. So you play. It's a thing of 3 strokes and 1 gap. So where you are actually having this composition has something for every beat of teen tal. You either have a gap or a stroke, but that gap also has to be used very musically. That gap has to be used very musically. So gap, gap, 1, 2, 3, and and then re re ga, so same line again, and then ma ma pa, so re re ga, ma ma pa, and then ma re ga, and then ga re sa. One more time. Re, re. So just to be sure, we are dividing the first part of the composition into two parts for the sake of ease of your learning. So the first part is ga re sa ni da ni re re ga ga ga. So that should be your first part. Ga re sa ni dha ni and re re ga, and then followed by three more gas. So ga re sa ni da ni re re ga ga ga, and all those notes are going to represent one beat of the tabla. So every time you play, you want to follow the beats of the tabla, and you want to make sure that all of your strokes are following exactly on the beat of the tabla. If you play it with a software, you're going to notice that you won't be able to hear the tabla at all, because it's going to be so precise. That should be your goal. Coming to the second part of the first sthayi of the composition is re re ga. One more time, re re ga, ma ma pa. So re re ga and ma pa, and then ma re ga, and then ga re sa. I'll play it one more time without singing, and then I'm going to say out the notes for you. And that is the end of the first part. So I'm going to play the entire composition, the entire sthayi for you one time, and this time I'm going to play it with the tabla. I want you to identify the 12th beat without me counting. And that becomes a loop. You need to start practicing this, and it might be a little troublesome for you at the first, because there's so much that your mind has to calculate in this very slow tempo. But I suggest that you give this a week. If you have any questions, do write to me on the email below. On the next class, I'm going to show you the middle portion or the mancha of the composition. Till then, take care. Bye bye.